So this morning I had a notification come across my phone from a news app that I have on my phone, and it said the eyes of the world are on Minneapolis. That the eyes of the world were on Minneapolis to see what would happen, and he was talking about the Derek Chauvin trial, with the death of George Floyd, and they're talking about the fact that the jurors now are deliberating, what the verdict is going to be, and that the eyes of the world are watching the Twin Cities. I thought it was it's a pretty big statement, but it's true. A lot of us are watching closely what's going on in the Twin Cities, or what's going to happen, and then watching curiously to see what is going to happen next. As we watch closely what's taking place and what's going to take place in the Twin Cities, there's a good question for us to ask ourselves. Are we seeing things correctly? Are we seeing things clearly? Are we seeing things from the right perspective? And when I say things, maybe that's probably not the right word. I'm not talking about the trial. I'm not talking about even the events that have happened. I'm not talking about any of that. I should probably ask, are we seeing the people correctly? The people who are involved. Are we seeing, George Floyd's family correctly? Are we seeing George Floyd correctly? Are we seeing Derek Chauvin correctly? Are we seeing the other police officers? Are we seeing the jury? Are we seeing the community in the Twin Cities correctly? Are we seeing the people who have been protesting correctly? Are we seeing the people who are really, paying close attention to all this correctly? The people across the nation, some who are mourning the passing of George Floyd, others who are expressing mourning over the increased hostility between police and communities, others who are mourning, racial challenges in our world. Are we anybody you can think of who's involved? Are we seeing these people correctly? Are we seeing them from the right perspective? Because in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, God through the Apostle Paul tells us that we don't see people anymore from an earthly perspective. We used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. We get to now see people from a heavenly perspective, from God's perspective. And so it's important for us to think about, as we look at everything going on here, what does God see in all the people who are involved in and affected by everything that's been going on and is going on and will be going on in the Twin Cities, well, and even beyond the Twin Cities in our world. How do we see people? Sometimes what gets us into trouble in our world is that we see people, and in some ways it's like we kind of dehumanize people. Like that person is just a protester, or that person is just the person on trial, or that person is just a cop, or that person is just somebody from this background or that. But we just kind of start categorizing and labeling and doing these different things, and so it's easy to make Facebook posts about people or say things about people. But does God see people that way? He doesn't. God sees people for who they really are and what's really going on. God sees the unique challenges every person faces, the unique experience every person faces, and God cares for each person with whatever it is that they're going on, for however they are affected by this. God sees what's really going on in all of their lives and cares for each and every person. And when God sees what's going on in each of their lives, at the core of it, you know what God sees? God sees the same thing that he sees when he looks at every one of us. He sees that we are all people who are created by him, that we're created to be in relationship with him and to live life with him and to partner with him. But now we live in a broken world, and we're people who contribute to what makes this world broken. Our greatest need is to be right with him. And he loves us so much that he took care of that greatest need, even at the cost of he himself dying, of God himself becoming the man Jesus, laying his life down and dying on the cross for us. That's how much he loves each and every one of us, so that we can be right with him through faith and so that we can have life with him. Every person that we see involved in and affected by this difficult situation is somebody created by God who is now living in a broken world and contributes to what makes it broken. but as who was loved by God and who God has sought after, who God has come after, who God's Son has died for, and who God now loves and wants to be there to comfort, to take care of, to use everything that's happened to them and that they've done for their good and his glory. God sees everybody as people who he loves and cares for. And if that's how God sees everybody, that's how we get to see everybody too. In the next time coming up, I pray that we look at everything and strive to see everything from God's perspective. And may we love people the way God loves people, pray for people the way God cares for people. And may we begin to see things correctly, clearly, from God's perspective.